Great day to all my self-care friends and family. Welcome back to the Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I'm so happy that you decided to be here with us today. Now, before we get into today's episode, just a quick reminder. If you are feeling the vibe, go ahead and show us some love. Tap the screen, like, comment, and share this out with someone who needs a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. And I want to personally invite each and every one of you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org. We've made some upgrades over there, and I think you'll like what you see. It's your one-stop shop for all things self-care, and you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch and free resources to nourish your growth, and just remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So I encourage you to give yourself permission to pause, reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. Now, if anything in today's episode hits home, be sure to drop a green heart in the chat. It's our way of saying I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Today, we are talking about something real. Something I think that we've all experienced in one way or another, but something that people rarely sit down and address head on. And that is the distance between people. You know what I mean? Like those relationships that used to feel close. The ones that used to seem so effortless. And now all of a sudden, things just feel so heavy, so quiet, or even non-existent. And everyone wants to, tell their story, their version of why the distance, right? We just drifted apart, or life got busy. Time made us grow in different directions, right? Does that sound familiar to anybody? See, here's the catch, family. Distance isn't the real problem. Wasted wellness, welcome in, love. Distance isn't the issue, right? It's not the distance that leaves us feeling empty or hurt or unappreciated, right? The distance isn't the problem. The real problem, the root of why people pull away, right? Why hearts shut down, why you find yourself creating space. The root of this problem, you guys, is the disrespect. That's right, I said it. It's the disrespect. Y'all put disrespect in the chat because, listen, it's that subtle, quiet, sometimes glaring kind of, energy that just chips away at the trust, at the peace, at the connection. It's the moments when your feelings were dismissed, the times where your boundaries went ignored. It's the instances when your time, your energy, or your love was taken for granted. See, that's what really pushes people to step back, even when they still care. That's what makes distance necessary, not optional. Thank you for the gifts. And, here's what's wild. People will write novels about distance. They will make it sound almost romantic, like it was innocent, right? Like it just happened. But rarely will anybody talk about the disrespect that created it. The disrespect that made space the only safe choice. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Because I think that it's really time that we stop blaming distance and start naming the truth. Disrespect hurts. Disrespect is what drives people away. Disrespect is what changes the story. So as we get in this conversation, I just want you guys to lean in. I want you to be honest with yourself and maybe even admit something that you've been avoiding. Today, just, take a moment to ask yourself, where in my life has distance been hiding the real story? And what does the story say about respect and boundaries and my worth? So again, we're going to jump right in. We're going to start by defining the real issue. Give me a second to take a sip, y'all, as we start by defining the real issue. All right, family. So, like I said, let's dig in and talk about defining the real issue. When we talk about distance between people, most of us immediately jump to the idea that it just happened, right? You know the narrative. We say life got busy, our circumstances may have changed, the timing wasn't right? Or maybe we just grew apart. And yes, sometimes those things exist. Distance is a symptom, okay? The real issue, like I said, the thing that nobody ever really wants to admit is the disrespect. And so I'm going to break it down for you. Disrespect doesn't always show up like a lightning bolt. It's not always the explosive argument or a dramatic fight. A lot of times it's quiet. It's subtle, right? Maybe it's, the times where your feelings were dismissed. Maybe it's when you spoke your truth and you were laughed at or ignored or told that you were overreacting. Maybe it's when your time, your energy, or your care were taken for granted. All of that is disrespect. And that's what builds walls. That's what makes people start pulling away even before they, fully understand what's happening. And listen, I want to be real with y'all. Disrespect is sneaky because it doesn't always look dramatic, but it is, always feeling draining. It leaves you questioning yourself. Am I being too sensitive? Am I imagining this? Maybe I'm overthinking. And while you're questioning yourself, your heart starts to create space, right? Not because you want to, but because you have to. And your spirit is just simply trying to protect you. And so here's the question that I want you to reflect on. Where in your life have you started creating distance and you didn't really understand why at the time? Was it just distance, or was your soul saying, you know what, enough? I will no longer tolerate this disrespect. And let's be honest, sometimes even the people we love the most hurt us in ways that feel small at first, but over time it piles up, right? It starts with missed calls, forgotten promises, dismissive words, right? Ignoring your boundaries. But these little things start to add up and they pile up. And the worst part is people will look at the space that you've created and then they make assumptions. They'll say, why are you so distant? As if, you taking your space is a crime. But really, what you're doing is protecting yourself, right? You're just demanding respect that should have been given to you all along. I see you, Kale. I can remember a time in my own life when someone I cared about deeply just kept crossing my boundaries. And I stayed silent because I didn't want conflict. In the beginning, I thought maybe I'm just overreacting, right? Maybe I'm being extra. But each time my feelings were dismissed, my energy was drained a little more and a little more. And so eventually I realized that the distance that I had started to create wasn't turning me cold. It wasn't making me a mean or a bad person. It was me honoring my worth. I was finally listening to my spirit. I was finally choosing my peace again. And so, family, the takeaway from this is that distance is not the villain. Disrespect is. Distance is your heart's way of responding to the hurt. Distance is your soul's way of saying, I deserve more. I deserve better. And so the sooner we start naming the truth, the sooner we stop blaming the circumstances and we start really taking our power back. And so today I want you to, again, think about where in your life have you been experiencing distance? And, was it truly about timing, or was it about repeated disrespect? Think about how has disrespect manifested in your relationships? Did it, happen subtly? Was it quiet? And then at that point, you can start to really, truly, really peep the patterns and start noticing, where in your life have you had to step back to honor your heart, to honor your soul. I want you guys to acknowledge that boundaries matter. Okay? I want you to acknowledge that your feelings are valid. And honestly, just know that honoring your peace is not selfish. It is a necessity. It is a necessity. Very, very necessary. And so when we talk about the disrespect versus the distance, right? I think this is the part where most people just get stuck. Right. And this is the section that confuses many people because, in this area, it's like this gray area. And, this is where it keeps people confused and hurt and second guessing themselves. So again, if I break it down, distance is usually framed as something neutral, right? When we think of distance, we think of something innocent. Right? That's when people say the things like we've drifted apart or time has just pulled us in different directions. Like suddenly, we just don't have 24 hours in a day anymore. Suddenly all the things that we used to do with you, we lost that time, right? So we make it sound innocent. And yes, sometimes that is the case, right? Sometimes our circumstances shift. Right? We get new jobs, we get new relationships, we have children, we move, right? So in that aspect, yes, things change, and maybe time did kind of pull us apart because of the shift, right? But again, distance is never the starting point. Distance is the reaction to what is happening. So if I get a new job and my hours have shifted, the distance is just the reaction to what happened. I got a new job. My hours shifted. So now I had to place distance. I can't stay up and hang out online with my friends all day. Right? So the distance wasn't the starting point. It is the change in my career. It is the change in my habits. Distance is simply the reaction to what is happening. Distance is your heart's way of saying, I cannot do this anymore for whatever reason. Maybe you need space to protect yourself. Maybe you need room to breathe. Maybe you need time to heal, right? And, the reason why your heart tends to pull back, like I said, is the disrespect. And again, I'm not talking about the life happens moments where we know the reason why we separated, the jobs, the families, the new relationships, all that stuff. I'm talking about the unspoken one where we're just like, oh, I don't really know why I'm not hanging out, or, things like that. So that's where, you recognize that your heart is just kind of pulling back because you've experienced some disrespect. And so, we have to look at disrespect as something that is very active, right? Rich Risings brand. Disrespect is heavy. And it comes in so many forms. Okay, maybe, like I said, it's the moments where you were vulnerable, or maybe your words were brushed off, right? Maybe somebody has ignored a boundary that you've clearly set again and again, like they just don't hear you. Or maybe it was you being promised something and then repeatedly having those promises broken. That is disrespect, right? And so that's what forces distance between people. And again, I want you guys to hear me when I say that distance, the actual space between, is not the enemy. Disrespect is. Distance is survival. Distance is self-love in action. And again, you guys, if we're being honest, most of the time we see distance and we immediately blame ourselves, right? We start to tell ourselves, maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe it's me. Maybe I caused the space between us, right? But I didn't disrespect myself. You did. So we have to begin to normalize putting distance between the things that are hurting us. And, recognizing the difference between distance and disrespect is so powerful because it honestly shifts you from that victimhood into empowerment. It reminds you that stepping back is not a punishment. It's all about protection. It's about creating space that doesn't make you feel cold, right? That makes you feel stronger, wiser. That choosing peace over repeated pain doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you strong, right? Like I would rather have peace than to be left picking up the pieces because I continuously allow you to break me. Does that make sense? Like 10 out of 10, I recommend peace over being left in pieces. I can remember another situation with my family, right? It wasn't explosive, but every single time I tried to express myself, I was ignored. I started, noticing where I was being minimized. And every single time I would leave these conversations, I would feel exhausted, unseen, and completely drained. And so I slowly stopped reaching out as much. I slowly started creating space or distance between us. And of course, there came a point, hey, vegan healer, there came a point where, they started asking me, why are you being so distant? Right? But in that moment, I started realizing the question missed the point because I wasn't being distant for no reason. I was responding to the disrespect that I was getting. My family, that was a lesson for me in self-respect. And I finally had a conversation with them and just kind of said, you know what, I am changing and I am brand new and I am better, but I'm not saying that I'm better than you. I'm simply saying that I'm better than the person that I was yesterday. I'm simply saying that I don't want to do the same thing that we did yesterday. I don't want to keep showing up and keep being disrespected and keep feeling like I have to shrink or dim my light around you because that doesn't serve me. And ultimately, it doesn't allow me to serve you. Right? And so once we had that conversation, things did get better for us for a while. And then, we slid back into the disrespect. So I slid back out into my distance. Right? So again, it is very important for us today to really understand the distinction between, like I said, distance and disrespect. I think understanding the distinction is really life-changing. Because when we stop blaming distance and we start naming the disrespect, it gives us the opportunity to gain power, to take back our power, to gain clarity. It allows us to truly step into self-love, right? We step into healing. And most importantly, we stop letting other people's inability to hold themselves accountable, right? Their inability to respect us dictate our peace. And so now that we've talked about, distance and disrespect and how they are not the same, right? I want us to honestly just get real about how you can actually tell when the distance that you feel or that you've created is coming from disrespect, right? Not just life happening. Because sometimes we lie to ourselves as to why we've pulled back. And so the first sign in recognizing is repetition. Listen, when I say repetition, one time, mistakes happen, right? People forget, we mess up. That is normal. That is human behavior, right? We all make mistakes. But when it happens again and again and again, that's a pattern, right? So if you've ever felt the same hurt feelings time and time again, right? When you feel that hurt and that pain multiple times in the same relationship, family, that's disrespect. Like, that's not a mistake. I think about with little kids, as you're disciplining them, the first thing they always say, oh, it was an accident, right? It was an accident. No, you have hit me every day consistently. That's not an accident. Right? That is not a mistake. That is a pattern. And your heart knows the difference, right? So when people continuously do the same thing to you over and over and over again, that is a pattern. And if you are not careful, you will start to allow or establish a pattern of bad behavior. You will keep telling them, keep coming back, keep disrespecting me, keep neglecting me, keep abusing me, right? Because I'm allowing it. So just come back tomorrow, same time, same place, beat me up again, right? Your heart knows the difference. And so, when you are experiencing this, you start creating space, not because you want to, but because you have to. Exactly that, girl. It becomes a cycle. And so I want you guys to ask yourself, where in my life am I seeing the same hurt over and over again? I want you to be real and ask yourself, am I making excuses for it? Or am I noticing the disrespect? Spark Motive, welcome in. And I want you guys to take a pause and really feel that. Because again, we have to be honest with ourselves. Am I allowing people to keep showing up and disrespecting me? You were making excuses for it? No more. Tell them no mas. That's why I say, oh, Helen is gone. My sister LaShonda said, she gone. She not coming back. I buried her myself. I'm no longer going to let you keep showing up and abandoning me and disrespecting me and neglecting me. Right. You was allowing it. Past tense. No more. No mas. Not today. Okay. So again, that recognition is step one. Step two is you start to notice where you're feeling drained instead of uplifted. I want you to think about the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, right? After spending time with them, do you find yourself feeling lighter? Like you're energized, you're inspired, you're motivated? Or do you feel like you just ran like an emotional marathon? And I'm going to tell you, if you feel drained, that is your spirit's way of saying, I need some space. I need some room to breathe. Okay? And listen, that is not about weakness, family. It is wisdom. So for the people that you engage with on a day-to-day basis, and this goes for online too, y'all. This isn't just face-to-face interactions. When you guys are sitting in creators' live streams, Do you leave feeling energized and motivated and empowered? Or do you just feel like so drained, tired? Like now all of a sudden you're carrying all of this toxic energy and emotional baggage that is not even yours, but you done picked it up because for the last 30 minutes you've sat and absorbed all of their negative energy? Seems to me like if that's the case, you need to put a little distance between that. We've got to be very intentional about our energy. We have to be very careful with who we spend our time with, what we spend our time doing. And we should always choose things that pour into us, not drain us. So when I say pour in, I only inhale good. I make it a point to try to eat better. I make it a point to try to watch what I drink, watch what I consume. But I also make it a point to watch what I read, what I listen to, right? Because I'm consuming those things as well. And so now that we talk about being mindful of our energy, there's also, boundaries being crossed. And that's a huge one. Y'all know I'm all about boundaries, right? So when you think about the boundaries being crossed, you've said it before, you've set limits, you've been very clear about what it is that you need, what you want, what you don't want. And yet the behavior just continues. And I know that we've all been there, right? Even me being, this boundaries life coach, I still get tested, y'all, on a regular basis. Right? So we've all been there. But if I set my boundary and you keep showing up and you keep crossing it, you keep disrespecting it, again, that's disrespect, plain and simple. You don't have to like my boundary, but you have to respect it. And if you're not respecting my boundaries, then that is disrespect. And when it happens repeatedly, your heart is going to start to pull back. You will start to create distance because protecting yourself becomes necessary. And another sign, y'all, this is a little subtle sign. If the distance that you've created actually starts to feel relieving, I want you to listen to that. Because I cannot tell you how many times I have created a little space, right? I made a little bit of room for me to breathe, y'all. And in that little tiny space that I carved out for myself, I was like, this is really nice. It's really nice over here. Like it's all calm and peaceful. And yeah, this is better than I thought. To the point where people come knocking at the door, I'm like, shh, I'm not here. I don't have to yell it. I don't have to scream it. They just keep on knocking. And in my head, I'm like, you can't come in. Right? You can't sit here because this space, I noticed that I like it. You not being in my life actually feels good. It feels better than you were when you were in my life, right? And I know that some of us feel guilty for stepping back, thinking that we're abandoning someone. But if that space is bringing you peace instead of pain, then that is your intuition telling you that this distance was necessary for your well-being. And that's not indifference. That is self-respect. And I don't care who it is. It could be your mama, your daddy, your children, right? It could be your cousin. It could be your best friend from first grade. It doesn't matter who it is. Yes, Kale says I self-isolate from the drama. I ain't got no room for it. Okay, I ain't got no time. And another one while I'm thinking about it is self-doubt, right? If you are constantly questioning yourself about, being around someone, if you are constantly asking yourself, am I being too sensitive? Wondering if you're overreacting, that is a red flag. Because disrespect will make you feel like the problem is you, when in reality, it is their repeated behavior. And your heart tends to recognize before your mind does. So we have to pay attention to self-doubt. We have to pay attention to these flags. If every single time I'm around you, I start second guessing myself, that's a red flag. Right? And I have to be careful, because if I don't, then I'm going to let that imposter syndrome creep in. And I'm going to all of a sudden start to think that I'm less than worthy, that I don't deserve this. When in reality, that is simply just a red flag telling me to exit stage left. My heart feels it. My mind can't quite pinpoint what I actually am feeling. I can't really articulate it, but my heart is telling me this isn't what we want. This isn't what we deserve. So don't ignore those flags. Stop seeing a person's potential, a relationship's potential, a friendship's potential, and start seeing it for what it is. Because when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. That whole keep hope alive and I'm going to just stay a little around longer and it'll get better. It might. But what if it gets worse? Because it might do that too. I can't lose me while you find you. Because, that's not fair to me to hold on for this relationship or this situation, this job, whatever it is. It's not fair to me to hold on to it while you figure your life out. Welcome in, Coach. And so then finally, the last sign that I think of is energy imbalance. And y'all know I'm very big on my energy. I'm very intentional about where my energy flows, right? And so when I think of energy balance or imbalance, what happens when you are always the one who's reaching out, right? You're always the one checking in. You're always the one trying to make the connection work while the other person barely responds. And yeah, you may be the first to initiate. Maybe that's a time zone difference, y'all. Okay. But maybe like if you're the one to initiate, that's not always the issue to me. It is the lack of response, right? When things start to feel one-sided. When people just constantly leave you on red. When you're the first one to, start something, but they don't even have enough respect to show up and engage in it. That's another sign of disrespect. Oh yeah, you got some great news, Coach? And, we have to understand that distance in this particular, in this space, it's not cold. It is necessary for you to place that distance because you have to protect your energy. Because again, once you start noticing the imbalance and you separate, like if I'm always the one texting you and I'm always starting the conversation. And so then I go several days, weeks, now months, and I don't initiate. And you haven't peeped that? Then that right there is telling me all I need to know. And that's how things happen in a lot of friendships and relationships, right? At first, it's easy, it's fun, it's effortless. But then all of a sudden, things start adding up. You start having missed plans, broken promises, dismissive comments. And despite how many, times that you try to communicate, you try to forgive, you try to adjust, the disrespect doesn't stop. And there becomes a point where eventually, you just have to create space. And of course, that's the moment when people are going to ask you or point out that you've pulled away, that you've made some space, right? Because they didn't see it as disrespect. They just saw it as distance. And they are, wanting to place blame and they want to be the victim when really they're the villain because they're the ones who have pushed the disrespect in. But you have to understand that distance right there is what saves you. That distance right there is what protects your heart. Congratulations, Coach. That's amazing. Focus Mental, welcome in, love. Thank you for the heart, love. So again, family, here's the takeaway from this. If any of these signs have resonated with you, I want you to listen to me, okay? Your feelings are valid. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You're noticing what your spirit already knows. That disrespect is what drives distance. Distance is not the problem. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so happy that it resonates with you, Z. Thank you. Again, you guys, distance is not the problem. It's the protection. Now we've unpacked, how to spot the disrespect driven distance, right? And I want to keep talking about the things that people avoid. Hey, Lady Blue. I want to keep talking about the things that people avoid because, us talking about disrespect is how we start to raise awareness, right? Because I think that we tiptoe around this, right? We like to sugarcoat it and we tend to act like it's no big deal. But like, why we do that, y'all? Why are we doing that to ourselves? Why is it so hard for people to call it what it really is? Like, what is so scary about disrespect? Because if you think about it, most of the time we keep showing up and we allow people to disrespect us because we don't want to lose the relationship. Like, we don't want the relationship to end. But if you think about it, if you keep showing up in this relationship, if you keep sitting here and letting people disrespect you, at some point that relationship is going to end anyway. So what are we waiting on? Why do I have to be a sacrifice in order for this relationship to survive? Janelle, welcome in, love. Like, why do I have to keep sacrificing my joy, my well-being, just to remain in your presence? Like, who are you? Right? Like, who are you that you are so much better than me that I have to continue to allow you to step all over me, to disrespect me? Because if you think about it, disrespect is uncomfortable. And yeah, nobody wants to admit that they're being disrespected because that starts an uncomfortable conversation, right? But disrespect hurts. Disrespect is, it makes you feel small, overlooked, or unworthy. And if you've been, conditioned to put everybody else's feelings first just to keep the peace, to minimize your own feelings, at some point you just learn how to ignore it, right? You start to tell yourself that maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just let it slide. Hey, Queen, welcome in, Miss Sherry. Right? We say, maybe I'll just let it slide. And let me tell you something. That's exactly what people are counting on. They keep showing up and they keep disrespecting you to serve whatever narrative they got going on. And they are counting on you to let it slide. And, again, if you bring it to their attention, they're like, oh, well, that's not what I meant to do. I didn't intend. That wasn't my intent. Because the moment you bring it to their attention, they're like, what? So they say that isn't the intent. But I have to let them know that your intent doesn't erase the offense. Just because you didn't intend to offend me, just because you didn't intend to hurt me, doesn't mean that I'm not hurt. It doesn't mean that I'm not offended. So we have to start speaking up for ourselves, right? Now, in addition to disrespect being the uncomfortable thing, right, the elephant in the room, some people simply just fear conflict, right? Because confrontation is scary, right? Nobody wants to have the talk, right? They don't want to risk rocking the boat, losing a friend, or upsetting, the people that you care about. So instead, what do? We just let it roll, right? And if we're lucky, maybe we start, just creating space quietly. And then we beat ourselves up over it, thinking, why am I being so distant? But really, our hearts are just protecting us from that repeated disrespect. So yeah, confrontation is scary, but like that distance between, that's the necessary point. That is your way of saying, you know what, I need to protect me. I need to slide back a little bit. I need to analyze this situation a little bit more. And another common thing that I notice is that some people confuse respect with love or loyalty. They think if I'm close to them, I have to tolerate this. But that's a trap, family. Respect is not optional. And love doesn't cancel out disrespect. Oh, but I love you. No, but you're disrespecting me every single day. Loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. And until you recognize that, you might stay stuck waiting for someone else to treat you the way that you deserve. It is a trap. It is ghetto. 10 out of 10, I don't recommend. Because again, respect is not optional. Respecting me is non-negotiable. Look, here's a story for you, because I know most people like for me to paint the picture, right? And I know that some of this hits home for a lot of y'all. So I'll use myself as the testimony. But again, I've had someone in my life who consistently crossed my boundaries. And every single time I tried to address it, I'd be gaslit. Right? I was constantly being told that I'm just sensitive. And at first I stayed quiet. I tiptoed around the disrespect because I didn't want to rock the boat. Right? I really love this person. I care for this person. So I didn't want to risk losing them and everything that we've built. But over time, the silence that I had created started to feel really heavy. And if I'm being honest, my heart was exhausted. And so when I finally started creating the distance, I felt guilty. But even bigger than that guilt, I felt relief. And family, that relief was my spirit's way of saying, this is our protection. That is when I finally started honoring my worth. Thank you, Brand. Hey, T. Ellis, welcome in. So family, let's reflect just a little, okay? Because I really want this to hit deep. I really want you to have like some sort of aha moment in your life. Ask yourself, when have you stayed silent about disrespecting your life? How many times, have you pretended that their disrespect didn't bother you, only to feel it, that frustration creeping in, or that exhaustion building up inside of you? That is your heart's way of trying to speak up, even when your mouth doesn't have the words. And here's the thing, avoiding the conversation does not make disrespect go away. You can avoid it all you want. The disrespect is still going to be there. It's, being silent doesn't erase the hurt. It sure doesn't fix the pattern. And so we have to understand that people can only be held accountable for what they know. And you cannot assume that people know if you don't tell them. And so the only way forward is acknowledgement. You've got to begin to call it what it is. You have to name it. You have to say that this behavior is disrespectful and I will not tolerate it. I will not be disrespected. I will no longer sit here and be subjected to your disrespect. And then when you acknowledge it, when you stop pretending you don't feel it, you actually start to heal. When you decide how you want to respond, whether it's creating space, whether it's setting a firmer boundary, or maybe it's walking away altogether because nothing over here serves you. Okay? When you start to do that, you actually start to heal. So again, we have to begin by acknowledging the disrespect. We've got to name it. And then we have to protect ourselves. Each and every one of you are worthy of respect in every single area of your life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Spark motive. That's what happens a lot of times. We walk around pretending like we don't care about something. But in the reality, we care about it very deeply. We care greatly. And so a challenge that I even have for you guys today is notice all the places in your life where disrespect has, been tiptoeing around, where it's being ignored or minimized. And I want you guys to ask yourself, what can I do to acknowledge today that my heart has been trying to tell me that this isn't it? How can I honor my peace without guilt? And again, I know that talking about disrespect is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Hey, Mary. What up, Papa Smurf? It is necessary, you guys. That conversation is the bridge between confusion and clarity. It is the step that leads us from hurt to healing. And when we start naming it, we stop allowing other people's behavior to dictate our peace. It is the moment where we start to reclaim our power. And, just knowing that one honest conversation, one enforced boundary, one choice can change everything. Baby, I'll have the tough conversation. I tell a person in a heartbeat, hey, you got a moment? Listen, every single time I try to speak up, you cut me off. You minimize what I'm saying. You try to make me shrink to make yourself better. You step all over what I'm doing. Baby, I'll have that conversation. Because I know on the other side of that conversation is a slice of peace for me. Right? And I'm collecting my peace. I got my peace on reserve. What up, Smurf? So yeah, when we literally decide to start acknowledging the hurt that we feel, we actually start to heal. And so, we've talked about distance, we've talked about disrespect, and we talk about how our heart is responding to it, right? This is the most important part as far as I'm concerned, is that reclaiming our peace, right? Because all the insights and the reflection and the aha moments in the world won't help if you don't actually do something with it. And so first things first, we have to understand that our boundaries are not a punishment. Our boundaries are protection. Boundaries are love, self-love, right? So when you have the conversation and you tell them, I will no longer tolerate this repeated disrespect, you're not being petty. You're being wise. You're choosing your peace over chaos. And family, that is the most radical act of self-love in a world that constantly tells us to sacrifice ourselves for the energy of other people. And so I want you to know that reclaiming your peace isn't about making other people understand you. It's not about getting validation externally. right? It's about honoring your worth. It's about protecting your heart. It's about saying, I see the disrespect, I acknowledge it, and I refuse to allow it to steal my joy. Think about all the places in your life where you need to reclaim your peace. Where are you allowing this repeated disrespect to linger? And more importantly, what boundaries do you need to set right here, right now, to honor your energy and your heart? And in case no one's told you lately, healing is not linear. That means we don't heal on a straight line. Ultimately, it just means that healing is messy, right? We're going to have some good days. We're going to have some bad days. You might step back. You might step forward. You might feel guilt. You might feel doubt. That is normal. It is all part of the process. But every single time that you choose yourself, every single time that you choose to honor your heart, and every single time that you choose intentionally, you reclaim your peace. You're healing. You are growing. You are reclaiming your power. And so we must begin to honor our boundaries. We must protect our peace. We must truly understand that we deserve respect. It is our birthright. I choose to honor my boundaries. I choose to protect my peace. And I do all of these things because I deserve respect. And so every single moment of every single day, I choose me. And that's an excellent affirmation for you guys to say. I choose to honor my boundaries. I choose to protect my peace. I deserve respect. I choose me. And if you can't remember all of that, just say, I choose me. Right? I choose me. So family, remember, distance is not the enemy. Disrespect is. Distance is your heart's way of protecting yourself. Boundaries are your superpower. And reclaiming your peace, that's how you heal. That is how you grow. And that is how you show up for yourself every single day. Let's see here. What else we got going on, y'all? I done skipped all around on my notes. I done got into the spirit of the conversation. I don't know. I guess if I had to figure out a way to wrap all of this up, I would honestly say that moving forward is a journey. Okay? And when we think about moving forward, our boundaries, our respect, our self-love, they are all practices. They are all things that we get to do, right? It's not a one-time action. Healing isn't something we do today and we forget about tomorrow. Self-care is not a one-time thing. It is I have to do this. I get to do this over and over and over again. And so we have to understand that there will be challenges. People will test you. You might doubt yourself. But every single time that you recommit to your peace and your worth, you are growing stronger. You are reclaiming yourself more and more. And all that means is that you are going to heal on a deeper level. And so we commit to continuous growth. We have to begin to honor our journeys. And every single day we have to choose peace, choose respect, choose self-love. That distance doesn't break us. Okay? Distance doesn't break us. But disrespect teaches us, right? Boundaries protect us. Self-love empowers us. And when we move forward intentionally, choosing respect, choosing to prioritize our peace and acting with love, right? Curating our circle and truly committing to the growth, we create a life that truly honors our soul, our hearts, our spirit. Now, before we part ways today, let me leave you all with a little love and light. As always, I encourage you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every single moment in between. I want you to keep choosing peace, even when it feels just out of reach. And know that here at the Self-Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, to speak your truth, and to make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I cannot wait to connect with you all again soon. Thank you.